I don't know where or when I learned that there needed to be two Josephs, but transparently, I have tried to maintain an outward appearance that did not necessarily match my inner world for most of my life, and it's exhausting and sometimes embarrassing. Like when I would listen to music throughout high school, and instead of getting caught up in the story of the song or the artistry of the songwriting, what I would do is I would go into my head and I would imagine myself performing it, like all the time. And I never have admitted that publicly, so you're welcome. I didn't really have to admit that publicly. There was this one time in college when my roommate Rick saw this other side of me. He walked into our room while I was air guitaring, and not like I was just playing around, like pumping myself up for some paper I had to write. I was practicing my moves. I was very serious. I was sincere, and I froze when he walked in, and he froze. He had never seen that side of this business major before. It's really no surprise that after getting my degree, I actually became a touring musician for a decade, because that's all along what I really wanted to do, but I was sort of embarrassed to admit it. I didn't want that inner part of my life. I couldn't feel like I could justify it as I lived my life on the outside, but it's what I really, really wanted to do, even if it took forever for me to finally come clean about that. Now, in a much more serious way, this message series is about the relationship that your inner world has with your outer world. It's about the relationship of your emotional life and your spiritual life. The premise that we introduced in the last message, which started the whole series, was simply this: spiritual maturity cannot happen without emotional maturity. And I want us to consider today that when we neglect our most intense emotions, the ones that we think are dark and difficult and even the exciting ones, when we neglect our deepest longings and our deepest fears, we're actually false to ourselves. And I believe we close off an open door through which not only will we know ourselves better, but we will ultimately know God better. Unless you have an open and honest relationship with how you're really feeling on the inside, you won't just never meet the real you. I don't think you can really get to know the real God. There's a lot at stake with this idea. Now, I'll admit, it never really entered my mind that God may be speaking to me through my feelings. Wouldn't it be my feelings that take me away from God? That's sort of what I assumed. Or, doesn't the heart lead you astray? That sounds like something in the Bible. So I've tried to sort of ignore them or stuff them away or pretend like they don't exist. You ever felt like that? Maybe you don't expose how you feel because it feels weak. Or maybe you just don't let anybody examine how you feel. It's who I am. Deal with it, right? But what if most people go to their graves never truly knowing themselves? Wouldn't it be worth getting honest about what's really going on under the surface? You might not believe this today, but I'm actually convinced that God made you and me to be emotional. If I believe that every single human is created as a reflection of what God's really like, or we would say created in the image of God, then we are created to be open and honest about our feelings. And I get that idea because, as far as I know, as God has revealed himself through the pages of Scripture, God has let people know how he was really doing. Like, God wanted us to know at one point that he felt real delight with his creation. God wanted us to know that he is angry when his creation chooses to do things that hurt us. Even Jesus, who, by the way, claimed to show us what God is really like, expressed feeling lonely or feeling frustrated. There's this one verse, the whole verse just simply says, Jesus wept. Now, Jesus was tempted to behave differently all the time, behave differently than how he felt all the time. He was always being told to be something else or impress certain kinds of people or feel certain acceptable ways about the world around him. But before he hit all of those pressures, he also had this profound moment celebrating who he really was before other people or the culture around him told him how to be and how to behave and how to feel. And it was this moment when he was baptized. And people reported hearing the voice of God say in that moment, "This is my dearly loved Son, who brings me great joy." In other words, listen, this is what Jesus knows God is saying about him. I'm already loved. I already belong. I'm already enough. Imagine that. When Jesus would feel pressure to behave a certain way or to be accepted by important people, he already belongs. When he felt pressure to get other people to like him, he knows he's already loved. I don't think it's an accident that Jesus goes from this incredible statement to an incredible test of the hypothesis. Because right after the baptism in Matthew's biography of Jesus, in chapter 4, here's where it goes. Then Jesus was led by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted there by the devil, which another way to translate that word is by the liar. For 40 days and 40 nights he fasted and became very hungry. Now I want you to notice before I read the rest of this that he was led into this temptation by God himself. Like God wanted him to test what he knows is true about Jesus. God wanted to test the hypothesis that Jesus was enough, that he was already loved, that he already belongs. Now verse 3, during that time the devil, the liar, came and said to him, if you are the Son of God, if these things are true about you, tell these stones to become loaves of bread. But Jesus told him, it says in the next verse, no, the scriptures say people do not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God. Words like, you are already loved. Words like, you are already enough. Words like, you already belong. Verse 5, then the devil took him to the holy city, Jerusalem, to the highest point of the temple, and said, if you are the Son of God, jump off. For the scriptures say, he will order his angels to protect you, and they will hold you up with their hands so you won't even hurt your foot on a stone. Jesus responded, the scriptures also say, you must not test the Lord your God. Verse 8, next, the devil took him to the peak of a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their glory. I will give it all to you, he said, if you will kneel down and worship me. Verse 10, I love this. Get out of here, Satan, Jesus told him. For the scriptures say, you must worship the Lord your God and serve him only. And then in verse 11, the devil, the liar, went away, and angels came and took care of Jesus. Now, Jesus went toe-to-toe with the liar in dramatic fashion. But the categories of how he was tempted to ignore who he really was are the same as we all face. Think about it. He was tempted with, I am what I do, or I am what I have, or I am what others think. And those are the exact same lies that give all of us a distorted relationship with ourselves. You and I buy into any one of these, and all kinds of odd things happen. We behave in such odd ways, such detached ways. Like, we can't ever totally emotionally separate our successes and failures or how other people evaluate us, or we think that they're evaluating us, you know. Or we go the opposite way. Because I hate my dad or I hate my ex, I don't get real about that. I just need to live the opposite of what they would want me to do and what they would want me to be. You know, I see too many people ending up with people, friends or romantic partners who really don't impress them. Because great qualities intimidate, they threaten these people. Like, they might be thinking, even subconsciously, like, I'd have to grow up to be with him, or I'd have to be more adventurous or ambitious to be with her, or I'd have to let him see the real me. So I avoid people like that intuitively. So people who can't be real, we live our lives like that sardine game. Did you ever play that when you were a kid? You might remember it. It's like hide and seek. But everybody is looking for the one person who's hiding, and if you find that one person, then you go into hiding with them. That's how so many people live our romantic lives, or our friendships, or our marriages. Our churches are just groups of people who are hiding together in plain sight. We choose to hand our identity and the value of who we are to so many people. What is it that you think about me? Or what do you think I should feel about this? Doesn't matter how I feel. Doesn't matter what's going on underneath the surface. Your feelings about me must be true. Those are what I have to submit to. That's how I have to be defined. You know, when I was a kid, the best insult that anybody could come up with was taking my name, Joseph Barkley, and turning it into Joseph Broccoli, which, as insults go, that's not too bad. I can live with that. But then, a few years into childhood, I remember this pool party. I was in 6th grade, and I remember having a blast, swimming with my friends and playing Marco Polo, not the app, the pool game, doing cannonballs off the diving board. And then I remember later in the day when my friend's mom called us all inside to watch a video that she had shot during the day. And I didn't even know that she had the camcorder out, which is shocking considering that camcorders back then were like the size of furniture. But all 30 of us kids from my class huddled around the television in my friend's living room. And I sat near the back of the room with one of my friends on the couch. And we were giggling along with everybody else as we were watching, us just being silly and goofing off with each other. And then there was a shot of me diving off of the diving board. And this one kid in the front of the crowd of us yelled out, "Hey, look at Fatty." And everyone in the room erupted with laughter. And I did too, because I did not want to let on how that impacted me. I am 44 years old as I record this, and I still remember how that felt. Learned my lesson, right? I can't be completely comfortable in my own skin. Better not let them see me care or see me eat. But what if I, at that moment, had lived on the words of God, as Jesus said? We don't live by bread alone. We can be defined by, we can live for God's vision for our lives. Wouldn't I hear him say in that moment, "You are already loved. You already belong. You are already enough." Man, I wish I could get this tattooed on my own brain. I wish I could tattoo this on your brain, but that seems a little invasive. God does not want to give the world an ideal you, even if the world around you seems to be demanding it. God wants to give the world the real you. I don't think Jesus was selfless. I know that sounds probably like heresy or something. No, Jesus did not live like only other people counted. Jesus knew who he was. He knew what he was worth. Jesus served people, listen, without needing their approval, and that is an extremely different posture. In Radius, one of our 5 team virtues is stay humble. It's one of my favorite ones to teach on, actually. And you would think that if that's one of our 5 team virtues, that we would have a lot of shy people who never state their opinion and never talk about how they feel. They just kind of fade into the background. And yet, I am surrounded by, on our staff and our volunteer leaders, some of the most confident people that you will ever meet. And listen, if we are humble, like Jesus is humble, the way we say it is, we are going to stay humble by knowing who we are and knowing who we need. And that does not produce humiliation. Instead, it breeds confidence. This is the gift, the real freedom. Listen, friend, real freedom comes from knowing you are already approved by God as you are. So, what do we do about it? Well, if you can identify which lie plagues you the most, the ones that Jesus was tempted with, I am what I do, or I am what I have, or I am what other people think about me. That's a great start, because you're going to be better able to identify why you're acting in such false ways in certain situations. Like, why am I working so hard, right? Or why do I care so much about what this person thinks? Or why am I so jealous of her? There's actually a reason underneath, and you can discover it. But listen, change comes through brutal honesty. And I believe vulnerability, not just to another person, that's extremely helpful, but brutal honesty and vulnerability with God. Did you know how much God loves the real you? Did you know that the incredible sacrifice of Jesus was for who you really are, not who you will be one day or for your potential, not who you pretend to be. It's for who you really are. Like, did you know that? If you didn't know that, then I don't know that you've met yourself. I don't know that you've really seen that person of infinite worth and possibility that God created in you. Our invitation every single time we drop one of these messages is to trust your life to Jesus. Not so that you can just join some new system or ritual or routine, but because each of us is on a journey to find out who we really are. And I believe that Jesus has the very words of life. Let him teach you who you are. Let him teach you what you're worth. And if you want to find out what that looks like, you can go to radius.church right now to find out how. But for the Jesus follower joining us, hearing this message, nodding your head, right? Like none of that, you've probably heard sermons taught through the temptation of Jesus, maybe your whole life. But I'm going to invite you into a deeper level of transparency and vulnerability than maybe you have ever dared practice before. I invite you into a habit of silence and solitude. Now, you're going to need space that you create in your life where real feelings and God's voice are just more obvious. I was recently in line at a coffee shop, and I had the temptation, like we all do, just to sit there while I'm waiting and scroll on my phone. You know, maybe I even thought in that moment, because I'm so messed up, like maybe I just need to look busy or look like I'm really in demand so the other people there are impressed with this total stranger. But instead, rather than do that, I just stood there. This is 2021. I had a phone in my pocket, but I just stood there and just paid attention to how I was feeling. And I'm going to be honest with you, I started to tear up. Because what was really going on in that moment was a feeling like I wasn't doing enough. And in that moment, I could hear two voices. There was one of a liar telling me, Joseph, you are what you do. And because you're not doing enough, then you are not enough. But at the same time, there was this other voice, because I've trusted my life to this voice. Joseph, you are already enough. And the words of the God who tells me who I really am are the real words of life for me. You know, I've heard people say, I wish I could be as free to be the real me as when I was a kid, right? We all have this vision of maybe when we were kids, we were free to just be ourselves. You know, before I was told that I couldn't be this or I had to be that. We like to think that kids teach us so much because it seems like they're so free and they're so curious to explore. But that's only sort of true. I think about it. Only within a certain framework is a kid really free and really curious about their world. Take a 3-year-old to a park, drop them off, and then walk away. I'm not actually recommending you do this for the record, but just imagine this. It would not take that 3-year-old long to panic and have some sort of like an existential crisis, like my caregiver or my parent is gone and I'm in a strange place. And a child with someone that they perceive to be safe or some structure around them in which they have some consistency, without that, they're going to develop severe anxiety and worry. And they don't learn anything in those environments. Their brains just shut off. They get into that lizard mind, and they are feeling anything but free or full of childlike wonder. Instead, they are spending all of their efforts searching for an anchor. This is supposed to tell us something. No wonder you and I don't want to go to these deep, honest places, because I believe intuitively we think we're going to be totally alone in there, without an anchor, without a rule book, unless we're not. Unless in that place that right now you think is ugly or unacceptable or useless, what if the words of God to you in that place whisper to you, whatever you feel down here, whatever we discover, you are already loved, you already belong, you are already enough to me. Now, let's be honest about this stuff. Let's question this stuff. Let's not be ruled by this stuff. You are more than this stuff. I want to show up to my radius, my circle of influence, as the real me, knowing that I am already loved completely by God. I am defined by God. I am being shaped by God because I want to love you from confidence and honesty. I invite you into that space too.
Thank you for joining us this week. If you're new, we want to meet and support you. Just go to radius.church and click the I'm New button so we can have someone reach out to you, get you your free Starbucks card. Next week, our message is titled, The Past is Too Powerful. And I know some of you are chained to your past for whatever reason. Make sure you tune in next week where we unpack how to overcome your past. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps us reach more people, and no matter where you're at, Radius is here for you. See you next week, Radius.